Welcome to the Gospel Gardens. This is the largest project I've ever created. It's based on 14 stations of the cross, but it's so much more. Within each of the panels, within each of the sculptural panels, I have a foreground scene of the Passion of Christ, but all in the background you'll be able to see very subtle representations of the parables. It is a sculpture project that requires a lot of time to look at because things reveal themselves. I haven't counted, but I think there's more than 1,000 different figures represented within this. One of the great features of this project is by having 14 monumental sculptures, I could almost create theater using the sculpture as a sequential narration of the Bible. It was absolutely a brilliant project. It took me basically 3 years nonstop working in my studio, starting at 4 in the morning. As I worked on this, I would listen to audio tapes of the New Testament on repeat. And it was a phenomenal experience. I pushed in as much as I possibly could within these sculptures of some of the key elements of the Gospels. It was an amazing project, and here I am standing after 4 years. It took a year to cast and install the project. Here I am standing at the finished Gospel Gardens. That's what I called the project. I didn't want to call it the Stations of the Cross because it seemed too limiting because of all the imagery represented within it. Here I am standing here in Orlando, Florida at the Mary Queen of the Universe Basilica with the hope that people will come and really have a very unique experience that highlights and draws them in, pulls them into the Gospels in Christ. As I worked on this huge project, I couldn't help but thinking about the great cathedrals in Europe, about how a lot of the details, a lot of the work was not necessarily just for the people to appreciate, but in a sense, a prayer in itself, a glorification of God. And for me to actually have that spirit that not only am I doing a piece of communication, but the very process of creating this is an act of worship, I think is reflected within each of the sculptures. At the end of the sculpture park, at the final part of the sculpture park, the sculptures become bigger, 30-foot bronze sculptures. And within this, in this huge canvas, I was able to embed even more representation, more narration. And it really is a success because I actually accomplished putting saints from all over the world within one sculpture. Mary, Queen of the Universe, the sculpture number 13 is epic. I wanted to actually represent the universe with the universe. I actually created planets, stars, and the stars, what I did was I actually punched through the actual bronze so the light could come through. The inspiration for this piece, it was a collaboration with the Vatican Observatory. They directed me in some of the figures that were absolutely necessary to put in here to tell the story of the relationship between science and the church. Within this piece, I have Lemaitre, who's pointing to the Big Bang, his theory, and within the Big Bang at the top of the sculpture, you have the hand of God in the center. The universal church is represented with saints from the world. Very powerful and very meaningful for all the people that view it. They can see their own saints from their own countries within this sculpture.